This is a video about how there isn't necessarily one way to make money or to do property. There's all kinds of people with all kinds of different levels of experience. Everyone likes doing different kinds of work. Some people like numbers, some people are better at reading, other people like to communicate. For example, one successful property investor I know is a solicitor. He has a long history of dealing with legal issues, especially legal issues when it comes to landlords and property. He understands all the legal documents and processes. He can get all the legal work done very quickly, but he doesn't like spreadsheets. So even spreadsheets he tends to outsource and get done for him, whereas I would be the opposite. I have a long history of working with numbers and data, and those are my strengths. So the spreadsheet and number side of things would probably be one of my strengths, whereas the legal knowledge and knowing the right people to put properties through in the right way is probably a bit more challenging for me. As mentioned in previous videos, my last 3 property purchases took months to put through, but I do notice people with specialised legal experience can often get these things expedited. This particular investor understands all sorts of issues to do with leasehold flats, for example. There are online calculators that enable you to work out the cost of extending leases for specific properties. Most people can do this, he can do this, but then he specialises in the underlying legal knowledge, and there are a number of other things you need to do behind the scenes to make these sorts of deals work. So this is his edge, basically. Another very established property investor I know just loves to communicate. He has an engineering background as well, which probably always helped him with the numbers, but he worked for an automotive company for years, and he was very ambitious from a young age, maybe a bit too ambitious. So when he bought his first property, he was warned that he would fall into debt, which he did, and then he rented the other rooms out to his friends, and then thought he didn't have to pay tax, then he had to get in trouble, then he had to get that rectified because he got in trouble for that. So he's basically someone with a lot of energy and drive. He's made mistakes, but he's learned from the mistakes and built on them. He then learned that when getting his properties managed, a lot of the agencies were falling short and not delivering, so he started his own agency. He's good at dealing with people, which is why he can now manage 1,000 tenants. So he's someone who was good with numbers and started buying properties in the early 2000s when it was much easier to do this sort of thing, and he's built on that, and then he used his experience to then build an agency out of all of this. That's further expanded his operation, so he's someone who's good at dealing with people and can do the numbers. So these are his edges. I know of someone who inherited, I think, 50 or more properties from his dad, so he obviously had a very good start, and he spent his life building on that. I believe that was his stable base, and then he went on to do developments and conversions and things like that. There's another developer I met at an event, and his family have been doing property, I think, for 2 or 3 generations. So even when he was young, he just went to university to get a qualification, but he said he always knew he was going to go back to the family business, so he had a job ready and waiting for him there, and then managed to do his own properties and his own developments. So many of these people can be much further along in the journey. Yet another landlord who owns over 700 properties has a different story. He did all of this himself, and he's been doing property only for around 15 years as well, but his background is heavy in economics. He understands the economy, and that's his edge, whereas my approach has been refined by developing good contacts. He understands the economy and works out the main drivers of the economy and where developments are likely to happen, where money's going, where it's being taken from, and he's invested in many projects by working out which areas will be up and coming and which schemes are likely to work and which aren't, and then he gets investor money to help him do this. That's how he's built up such a huge number of properties in a relatively quick time. I do recall once he bought 90 properties in Scotland or so, he told me, but I believe this is from JVs and doing projects with different people, his title splits and many other things like that. So these are many of the things that a lot of people talk about, but it's only very few people like him who are able to go for it and do everything properly as well, make sure everything's monitored and planned out and executed perfectly, and he knows how to get the joint venture partners because he comes from a position of strength when it comes to his background and knowledge. Another property investor I know, he was an optician, so he was always very good with numbers, but he tells me he's dyslexic, so he doesn't really like things like ChatGPT or reading things, but his edge is numbers, but also he's very outgoing and good at speaking, going to events and networking and getting himself out there. He always seems to have a number of projects on the go, and he's quickly scaled a portfolio, again by getting joint venturers and investor money, because he likes talking and getting out there and having meetings with people. Someone else I used to work with was very easygoing. He didn't take life too seriously, and he enjoyed practical work, so he bought a couple of properties and he sold them for profit. Then in about 2015 he bought a very large property that needed renovation, and he naturally enjoyed doing this work, but it took him about 3 to 5 years to fix up completely, and then he sold it after about 5 or 7 years. I'm not sure of the exact timelines, but it was something like that. But then in that time, with the appreciation of property prices and the amount of value he'd added, I think he'd made about £300,000. So with that, along with other money he had, he bought 2 or 3 properties unencumbered, and he's in his early 50s, and since then he's just been living off these. He doesn't need to work anymore. So his edge is that he enjoys practical work. He's not too concerned about building a huge portfolio. He just wants enough money to make a decent living. My approach has been different. As you go through life, you realise your strengths and weaknesses. I think I have a propensity for being able to focus on certain tasks intently. I always had a knack for numbers and was quite good at maths and such subjects, which is why I did astrophysics at university, and then I spent much of my 20s in academia doing this kind of work, which led to data science, and prior to that I'd become a senior quant analyst. So my strengths are probably working with numbers, or pattern recognition, numbers, coding patterns, focused technical work. So this kind of work enabled me to earn and build resource and get higher and higher contracting rates, as mentioned in previous videos. That's how I built my resource. I'm also, as mentioned, very frugal and don't waste money, so most of what I earn I naturally put into mostly buy-to-let properties. The approach I took didn't require me to go out and find loads of investors or get money from people or have lots of meetings. I used my day job to build resource and then built property out of that, and that's been honed and systemized. So my approach in general has been not to get loads of people in for a deal or to do JVs. I have been to a number of networking events now. I've had meetings with potential JV partners or people that could help me scale quicker out of projects like this. So far I haven't done anything like that. I haven't had a huge drive to get investor money. Maybe this is something I'll do in future, but again, my approach to property has been relatively passive. You want to maximize your earnings in any given time and then use that to help you build passive income. So if this kind of approach appeals to you, then please get in touch. I can help teach you how to do this. It all depends on what you're good at and what you like doing, and that's the great thing about business and money. There's no one size fits all. There's many different people who like doing many different kinds of things. I went to a deal sourcing course, and the person teaching that, she was really good at going around and networking and viewing properties and getting things done that way on perhaps a bit less mobile. Viewings for me are not that exciting. The idea of logistics and having to travel around everywhere I find a bit tedious. Some people really love it, and you might do as well, and this could be your edge. You might be better at deal sourcing or working out yourself or how much potential there is in certain different properties. Others may be better at the spreadsheet type work. I went to a development course a few years ago, and the person giving the speech just loved to travel all the time, loved going on holidays. She liked talking a lot, but she hated all the technical and numbers work, but she had a business partner that took care of all of that. So often that can work as well. People with different backgrounds and different ways of approaching problems and different skill sets can come together and make an extremely powerful team. If you like getting out there and networking a lot but don't like technical work, there's obviously ways for you to then make money. Some people prefer focused work, and they could probably take an approach more akin to the one I've taken. So once again, there's no wrong or right way, and don't feel intimidated if you don't have certain characteristics that quote unquote business gurus have. I used to think everyone had to be like Alan Sugar 25 years ago, quite aggressive, but then I noticed in Dragon's Den there were many dragons who had quite a nice and calm manner about them, and they were still able to achieve success. Everyone's different, and that's what makes things interesting in the world of property and money. Thanks for listening. See you next time.